There's nothing like cracking that cellophane and pulling that record out. It just smells great.
Welcome to BODS Mayhem Hour.
Non-stop hardcore energy.
I love the show, guys. You're awesome.
Unlike any other.
With your host, John the Bod, a.k.a. The Bodfather.
Man, this stuff rocks.
Hi, everybody. This is Scott Pingel, and you're listening to BODS Mayhem Hour.
The views and opinions of the guests do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of BODS Mayhem Radio Network, its staff, affiliates, or sponsors. Parental discretion is advised. Welcome to BODS Mayhem Radio Network.
Hey everybody, welcome to BODS Mayhem Hour. I'm your host, John the Bod, a.k.a. The Bodfather. And as always, I'm bringing you guys and gals awesome interviews. Today, it's an honor and a very huge privilege to welcome Scott Pingel. He is a teacher at San Francisco Conservatory of Music and electric bassist of the San Francisco Symphony. Scott performed on Metallica's S&M 2 night event that took place September 5th and 6th at the Chase Center. That was last year, 2019. S&M 2 concert featured the first live performance of Michael Kamen's original arrangements in 20 years, plus the first ever Metallica San Francisco Symphony renditions of songs written and released since the original S&M, with new orchestral charts by Bruce Coughlin. Also, during this live performance, Scott performed Cliff Burtons' iconic bass solo, Anesthesia Pulling Teeth, from Metallica's Kill 'Em All album, and we're going to jump right all into this. So, Scott, how you been doing, man? And welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on, and I love that you call me the electric bass player of the San Francisco Symphony. That's hilarious. My official title is principal bass player, but I think I'd rather be called the electric bass player of the San Francisco Symphony.
Yeah, I'm going to make you sound metal, man, so you're going to be the electric bass player.
That's right. Actually, I do play electric a fair amount. We do different kinds of shows, and I get I have a 6-string electric bass that I love to get out and play every now and then. It's just it's such a joy to get to do that.
Oh, nice. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So let's jump right into this bad boy. What have you been up to during this pandemic other than talking and performing with the San Francisco Symphony and Metallica's S&M 2? Man, let's talk about this a little bit. What have you been doing during all this pandemic?
Well, fretting and just like not knowing what to do with myself sometimes when, we're not having performing going on. I've been teaching a fair amount, and then I've been spending the time learning a lot of new repertoire, doing some of my own editions of different pieces in the classical music world. Learning new pieces and trying to refine my technique a little more, just really looking at things where things can be ironed out further. Spending a lot of time studying pedagogy, trying to improve myself make myself a better teacher. There's always a lot to learn with that too. And so I've been trying to take advantage of the time to try and do what kind of improvements to my own skill set that I can possibly do. But yeah, I've really missed playing. I miss being with other human beings making music and doing it for people who want to hear it. It's a remarkable, crazy time that we're all living through right now, and it's hopefully not going to be going on too much longer. We'll see. Actually, today I had my first rehearsal back with the San Francisco Symphony, but it was a very reduced ensemble. It was only 6 people, but we were on stage rehearsing a new piece with the composer who wrote it, and it was just like, man, it was so nice to be in this on stage and hearing the sound resonating in the room live, being generated by live musicians together, in the same place. It was just wonderful. So it was kind of emotional, actually. But we're a little bit behind some of the other orchestras in the country that have been doing more performances and live performances, but that's just the way, our city is restricting us. It's not that we don't want to do it. We want to, but we just can't. So it's kind of frustrating. But
I can imagine. Small steps, but you know what, man? We'll get there. We'll get there soon.
Yeah. You have to keep the faith. Yeah, I have to try and keep the faith.
When you got your first double bass at the age of 17, what was it actually about the double bass that made you pursue a music career? What was it playing that instrument that said, yeah, I think this may be my niche?
Well, it's funny. I actually started on electric bass So that was really my first. Yeah, and that's kind of how I got exposed to Metallica. So I was 15, and actually I should backtrack a little bit. I did start on cello. I did play cello a bit as a kid, but I just didn't have the discipline to practice, and I didn't want to practice, and my parents would try to get me to practice, and I would do things to try and avoid practicing, but secretly I did love it. But I went all out, man. I did crazy things. Like my mom said she'd be in the basement doing some ironing or something, and she said, "I'll be listening through the heating vent for you to do your practice, and you have to do a good half hour practicing, and I'll be listening." And I was okay. So one night I did a really good solid half hour practice, and she listened to me through the heating vent. She came up and said, "Yeah, good job. I could hear you working and whatnot." And then the next night, or a couple nights later, same thing. She's like, "I'll be listening through the heating vent." Well, little did she know that I had recorded myself that first night, and that she was being diligent about this. And then I, while she went downstairs and was doing some ironing or laundry or whatever she was doing, I pushed play on the recorder and put it up against the heating vent and went and watched TV. And my brother saw me do that. He was like, "Dude, you're going to get in so much trouble." I was a little kid at the time. He was, of course he told on me and I did get in trouble. But my mom was so impressed at the lengths that I went to deceive them that she almost couldn't get all that mad, but I still got grounded. Anyway, but because I'd started on cello a little bit, and then years later I had a friend who played electric bass a little bit, and I just fell in love with it, and I just thought this is super cool. And then there was this garage band down the street that was getting started with some friends of mine, and like, "Yeah, don't you know how to like play bass music or something? Didn't you play an instrument?" And I said, "Yeah, I played cello." And they said, "Hey, would you play bass in our band?" And so I talked to my parents, and I had some money saved up, and anyway, we went in on it together, and I got my first electric bass when I was 15, and it was a Yamaha BB1000S neck-through body, and then I used PV amplifier, and that was my first rig, and then I started playing in this garage band, and we did some Metallica covers, and I like to make the joke that none of us wanted to sing, so we did all these covers of like Metallica and Led Zeppelin and various bands, and nobody sang, so we just played them instrumental. It's just ridiculous, but at least it was fun to just jam. And then my sister, who's older than I am, was a singer, and she had started in this horn band and did a lot of funk music and like Tower of Power and Earth, Wind and Fire and Chicago and those kinds of bands, and I was listening to that a lot, and then I started playing in that band actually not that much longer after I had started playing in this garage band, and so then I just started to snowball. I started getting more and more work and more connections, and so by the time I finished high school, I was like, you know what, I think I was nearing the end of high school. I was thinking I want to do this for a living. I was already playing almost every weekend. And but I realized if I wanted to go to college, I needed to learn the upright bass because there weren't too many schools, at least state schools, that were going to offer a degree in electric bass. So I realized I needed to learn the big one. So it was this summer, just before my senior year in high school, that I got my first upright bass, which was kind of funny enough. It was a bass made by a company called American Standard. You may have seen their logo on toilets and sinks and things like that, and urinals. Same company. So back in the 1930s, they were some sort of like conglomerate or something at the time. It was the exact same brand stamped on the back of the bass at American Standard. It was made in Cleveland in like 1934. It was this old plywood bass. That was my first bass.
I love see people playing the upright bass because, I don't know, I just think it's an instrument that's forgotten, kind of, because rockabilly still uses it. All these horror punk rockabillys, they use it. I like the sound of the old bass like that, man.
Yeah. It's especially when you don't have to plug into something. There's something that's just pure about the vibration of wood, and just sort of the intimate sort of connection that you've got just with that sort of setting. Without all of the electronics processing the sound before it gets to people, which is also awesome too. But it's a different experience, and there's a certain purity to it that I really relish.
Distortion to an upright bass that'll rot your teeth.
Yeah.
Any bands that someone would be surprised you like or the style of music you like? It coming from, say, everybody knows you play with an orchestra, symphony, things like that. And you say, I like Judas Priest and things like that. What's the reaction? Are they like kind of stunned?
Well, by the time my generation is around, I think there was more eclectic tastes in music. And so, I grew up with a very broad range of music that I was interested in, from very classic jazz to even like almost avant-garde jazz, to I even played in a salsa band. There's all kinds of different styles of music that I played, and I played in a wedding band for years, and we had to have a huge songbook of a variety of things to offer for clients, and so a lot of different styles I had to know. I think that's more common, I think, by the time my generation comes along. But sometimes, the older generation, it was, I think that maybe they would be a mild interest in jazz if they were a bass player, but, like a lot of the musicians, maybe not so much. It was pretty focused on classical. So I think it's just somewhat of a generational thing.
I know we lost Michael Kamen in 1999, who worked on the original S&M with the San Francisco Symphony. Did you ever get to work with him? And also, how big of an impact was the orchestral world and music world losing Michael?
Well, I mean, it's a little before my time, actually. I mean, I didn't join San Francisco Symphony until 2004. And before that, I was, for the most part, I was in school, and so I was very preoccupied with that. So I actually didn't know a lot about him, and I had never worked with him, obviously. So I can't really speak to that, but from what I do know, yes. I mean, it was from colleagues I've talked to that he was a big fish in the music world. So yeah, and he was a very very strong presence. So yeah, it certainly felt throughout the music business, especially like the crossover in studio world and all that.
Yeah, that's what I was going to really say. Man, he bridged that gap between metal and symphony. I mean, he made it fit perfectly.
Yep, yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Working on S&M 2, Scott, was it somewhat challenging working on these songs, or was it pretty smooth from possibly having criteria from the first S&M?
Well, I mean, I grew up with some of these songs, so I knew how they went.
Sure. Well, yeah.
And also, I'd heard S&M 1 numerous times, especially after they announced that it was happening again and that we would be doing a fair amount of the tunes along with some new stuff. I started listening to the record again all the time and just getting the sound of it in my head it was really fun. I mean, there was a couple of spots in there that were a little gnarly to play, but it wasn't too bad. It wasn't, not for our instrument. It wasn't too bad. It was mostly fun.
I couldn't imagine, man. I'd be, starstruck. I'd be just in awe. It would hit me hard.
Oh yeah, no, it was pretty cool being around those guys, especially James and Lars and Kirk, being original members and on the records I was listening to when I was younger. Mm. There was a few times I was kind of like, whoa, I can't believe it. These are these guys that I've been listening to. But then also thinking about Rob. I mean, I used to listen to Suicidal Tendencies too, and so I've been hearing Rob a lot longer than I guess I would have otherwise thought. Yeah, Rob and I, it's pretty wild because we kind of became good friends with this. We actually stay in touch and we text each other every now and then, so that's kind of cool.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And plus, you grew up with this, listening to Metallica. What was your reaction of Metallica wanting to do Cliff Burton's iconic bass solo, Anesthesia, Pulling Teeth? Was this something that you said, I need to do this, I need to present this and do it justice on the symphony side? Was this the first time learning this on the electric bass?
Well, so I first got exposed to Anesthesia when I was like 15. My brother was a big Metallica fan, and I knew a few of the songs, but then he turned me on to the Kill 'Em All album, and he's like, hey, check out this bass solo, because I was just starting to play electric bass, and I was just trying to learn everything that I could, and I remember listening to it, and I learned a little bits of it, and kind of played along with it, but I didn't know anything about effects. I didn't know, what to do with that, but I just knew I really liked it. So when S&M 2 came around, the music director of San Francisco Symphony, Michael Tilson Thomas, pulled me aside when in the very early stages of planning things. Actually, it had already been publicly announced, but there still had the details to work out. And he asked me if I had any ideas, because he knew I had a broad-based background in different styles of music, and if I had any ideas of things that we could potentially do that were new and different ways to use the orchestra, or even feature members of the orchestra. And I said, and it almost immediately came to me. And I thought, you know what, I've got this idea. Let me work on it, and I'll get back to you in a few weeks to see if I can pull it off. And the idea I had in my head immediately was to do Anesthesia on an upright bass. And so I worked it out a little bit and worked on it, and I felt like I could pull this off. And so I did an email proposal to him, and I spoke to him and also sent it in an email of what I would do. And he said, this sounds really interesting. I'll forward it over to the band and see if they like the idea. And the band, they liked it preliminarily, but I didn't even really get final approval on it until really a few days before the first rehearsal. It was quite the process, you know. So I proposed it, and that was probably in May of 2019, late April, early May, something like that. I remember exactly. And then it wasn't until July that I got word from Edwin, actually, that the band was, you know, really into it, and that but they still needed to hear it at headquarters at the end of August before the rehearsals began. And so I had to rearrange my schedule to make sure I was in town at late August, right before the rehearsals began for the September shows. And then so that's what I had to do. I had to go up to headquarters, Metallica HQ, and play it for them.
I want to jump back here just for a little bit and talk about Robert, because I don't think a lot of people realize that, yes, he's been with Black Label Society as well, Suicidal Tendencies, and Ozzy Osbourne. You know, he's played...
And Infectious Grooves.
Yeah, Infectious Grooves. I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was getting ready to say it, but I could not remember the name. But
that's all right.
He's a phenomenal bass player, and I know Jason Newsted was Metallica's bass player after Cliff Burton, and I was like, I'm pro Jason. You know what I mean? It's like Jason.
Yeah.
And now Robert's like, holy crap, man. Robert can lay down some bass tracks, dude. He can absolutely play the bass like nobody's business.
Yeah, he's awesome. Rob is awesome. In fact, that day that I played for the band at HQ, I was just hanging out with the guys in their sound booth, and he and Kirk just started jamming at one point, and I was just sitting there with my mouth open. Rob is just a monster, and it was just, of course, Kirk's awesome too, but I'm a bass player, and just watching the two of them just having so much fun, and Rob's like jumping around and playing these funky licks and stuff. It was really, really fun, and they were just having a ball. It was really fun to get to just hang out with them and sit around, and yeah, that was quite a fun day.
Yeah, they feed off each other like, I don't know, gravy and biscuits, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're good.
Yeah.
How nervous was you performing this, knowing that this was Metallica's staple of an instrumental? And I know growing up with this, you've listened to it before, and knowing Cliff's dad was at the show as well. How nervous was this, man, for you?
You know what? I tried not to think about that too much, because it could create a vicious cycle of nervousness. But yeah, I did get, I did definitely experience anxiety, and just this thing that was coming up. It would be the largest crowd that I ever played a solo for. I mean, as a classical musician, I've done solos and concertos and things for a couple thousand people, but not almost 20,000 at a time. And so, but on the flip side, a number gets to a certain point where it's just kind of, you can't even really comprehend it, and it's like it almost doesn't matter if it's 20 or if it's 2,000 or 20,000. It's still, you can get nervous. In the rehearsals, about a week before the show, that's when it started to kind of hit me a little bit, and I was like, "Whoa, all right, I got to do some deep breathing here. This is crazy. I can't believe this is actually happening now." I knew that Ray was going to be there because Cliff's stepsister, Casey, had contacted me because she had heard that I was going to be doing this, and she was sort of Ray's handler, if you will. I mean, she sort of helped take care of him and kind of help run the family business, and she had emailed me and said that Ray was going to be there and he really wanted to meet me, and then a couple of days before, after I had already played it for the band, like she had heard word, I guess maybe from the band or from someone about the solo, and she was like, we heard it was really cool, and we're excited to see it, and just knowing that, Cliff's dad was in the stands, and I was play for him, and then I got to meet him after the show, the first night, the Friday night show, and ended up at this private party. I spent most of my time there sitting with Ray, talking until, gosh, I was just hanging out with him until about, 4:30 in the morning. And he's an animal, man. I left him there. I was like, I got to go to bed, man. And he was like, what? He could have just kept going. He's like 93 years old. It was crazy. And then I hung out with him more again after the Sunday show. I was very happy that I got to, spend some nice time with him, and he was so grateful and kind of emotional too. It was very, very, very sweet. And that was, to me, that was the highlight of the whole thing. To be honest, that was the best part, is to get to do that for a guy that lost his son, and also for, these guys in the band, that this was their buddy. They lost their brother. And so that's kind of the way I looked at it. It was sort of about Cliff's humanity, and for those people that loved him and knew him. That was from the very beginning. Like, I knew I wanted to do this solo, but my sort of labor of love of doing it was for those reasons, and with no guarantee that it would even happen, because, there was never any final approval or any contract signed or anything like that it was going to happen. So I just kept going after it like it was going to happen. So, because I had a lot of legwork to do. I had to figure out what I was going to play and get the instrument lined up. I discovered that playing it on an acoustic upright bass was not going to work. I had to get an electric upright because of feedback issues, and then also finding out what all the effects were, because I had very little effects experience. So, there was a steep learning curve for me. So, I just felt like it was like a mission that I just had to do it.
Yeah. I mean, it's a powerful album. SM2 takes this orchestral stuff to another level. After hearing your solo, I mean, it made the hair stand on the back of my neck. I mean, it absolutely, awesome. I mean, it took me to, as if Cliff was there. I mean, it absolutely hit me hard. And I was like,
oh, I love it. Thank you.
I was like, you got to be kidding me, man. I mean, this dude is absolutely pouring his heart out on this bass. And I was like, he is absolutely nailing it. I'm telling you right now, Cliff would probably be smiling down right now at you.
Oh.
So, yeah.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. That was another powerful experience for me, was when I auditioned it for the band on that Thursday afternoon, just over a week before the first show, a couple days before the first rehearsal. I was set up in their HQ rehearsal space, right about where James Hetfield normally stands when they're rehearsing, and all of the Metallica entourage were standing in like a semicircle around me, and Lars told me to begin, and then I played it, and after I finished, they all cheered, and they were clapping and hugging, and it was just super cool. And then the first person to say something to me was Kirk.
Yeah.
And he said, "Man, Cliff would have loved this." And I was just like, wow, that's just, to hear that from him. He was particularly close with Cliff. And so then, we talked about the piece for a while and like what we wanted to do with it, and we even bantered about the possibility of Rob and I doing stuff. And this is another cool thing is, because they weren't sure what to expect. Here's this classical guy coming in. What are we going to do? Are we going to have to sort of like, put lipstick on a pig if we decide to do this? This guy coming in and doing this. So they were like, maybe is Rob going to have to step in and play some stuff with him or whatnot? And so Lars came up to me and Greg Fiddleman, and like, so we were thinking that originally, like, maybe, you and Rob might kind of jam together a little bit on this. And Rob was like, know what? We got to just let this ride the way it is. I don't think we should touch this. And that was so nice. It was so magnanimous of him. Mm-hmm. And then Lars was like, yeah, I think I agree. And he says, he says, do you want me to play on this? I said, yes, I would really, really like it if you would play on this with me. Because that just like you did on the original. And he says, yeah, I'd love to. And so then we rehearsed it and, figured out what the right tempo was and all that. And then after that was all done, after, it was probably about an hour total, then I was hanging out in the Metallica HQ kitchen with Kirk for a while, and he was just telling me lots of stories about Cliff, and that was really fun to hear all that backstory. And then I just, at times, I was just sitting there thinking, like, wow, you just never know where life will take you.
Yeah.
I think back of where I was 15 and listening to that solo, and now here I am hanging out in their rehearsal space talking with Kirk, and I just rehearsed it with the same drummer that was on that album. And speaking of that, there was another moment that got a little intense. Was right before the second show, I was warming up, and Corey Grow, who's a journalist for Rolling Stone magazine, someone introduced him to me and said he wants to interview you. And I was like, oh, wow, Rolling Stone wants to interview me. How cool. Never imagined that happening. And so he was interviewing me, and then in the process of the interview, he says, you realize Lars told me that this is only the second time he's ever played this piece, played on Anesthesia, since Cliff died.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
And that moment right there, I got a little bit unglued from that. I was a little freaked out. So I had to go find a quiet place to just kind of separate myself, just to try and reduce stimulus.
Oh yeah.
And just kind of just pray and just center, and that helped. But yeah, that was kind of intense.
Yeah, you got the hair standing on my arms right now, dude. Man,
thanks.
This is I love this. This is my life. Podcasting, music, Metallica. This is my life. I mean, these guys saved my life, and
I love it.
So yeah, and I mean, seriously, you knocked it out of the ballpark. I mean, honestly.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Well, it was a joy and an honor to get to do it, and yeah, it just, what else can I say? And then also meaningful is the fact that it was Ray's last concerts.
Yes, that is right, before he passed away.
That was the last show he ever saw, was the one that I played on.
Man.
And both of them, he came to both shows, but the night that you see on S&M2 on the record, that's the second night. And so that was Ray's last concert.
I have that setting over here. Actually, I have that setting over here. I was going to watch it this weekend because I bought it. It's
awesome. It's far superior. I would say, as great as the movie theater experience was. But this is even better because they just had more time to do the editing and the pacing of everything, and the sound editing and all that. I mean, it was amazing what they did to get it ready for the theaters in as short a time as they did. But they had a much longer stretch of time to fine tune things, and it's really a very powerful experience. And we watched it. I got a copy. I had to buy a copy. Dang it! So it was just so funny. And I emailed the Mark Ryder, who's the creative director of Metallica. I forget what his official title is. He's one of the higher ups in Metallica management. And I mentioned to him that it was hard to find a copy of the deluxe set, and he was so happy to hear that. So, anyway, but it was really it's pretty amazing the editing that they did. Yeah.
Did you have any favorite songs while working on S&M2, other than, of course, Anesthesia? Did you have any songs on here that you liked, man, that actually got to play on?
Honestly, just I had so much fun playing all of them, from Master of Puppets to For Whom the Bell Tolls, Wherever We May Roam, like right after Anesthesia. That, I just love the sound of that, and the feel. It was just so powerful. Call of Cthulhu, because I had listened to it on the S&M1 so many times, was just a treat to get to play it, and Ecstasy of Gold, of course. All of it. I mean, it's hard to really pick a favorite. It was just so awesome, and just jamming out, and where I was sitting I was right next to one of the mics, and so I had different guys standing right next to me at different, sometimes it was James, sometimes it was Kirk, sometimes it was Rob. And so it was fun to just kind of jam out with those guys right next to me on the stage. So yeah, it was amazing. But yeah, I have to say, like right now, like Rome, wherever I'm in Rome is I'm really enjoying hearing that. I just love the sitar sound that Kirk plays. I forget what the name of that instrument is called, but it sounds like a sitar.
Yeah. The intro part to it. I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. And then just how when the orchestra comes in and the groove, I love it.
Yeah. Even without the orchestra, the way the song's set up, it's so badass. Both versions are awesome. I mean, to me, if you can't get excited about that song, there's something wrong with you. Yeah. Even if you don't like Metallica or not, you've got to like that song a little bit, at least a little bit. So yeah.
Yeah.
What do you hope everyone takes away from this experience, Scott, when they pop that disc in or the video in? What do you hope they get from it, man?
I hope that they get enrichment in their lives and a little glimmer of something that helps them process some aspect of their life that they're going through, or it brings them joy. I mean, these are the things that music does. It's like it's a spiritual experience. It's emotional. It should be, doing all those things for people. And it's something that's when I say that they enjoy it, it's not that it just makes them happy, but it's even deeper than that. It's like spiritually fulfilling to some degree. That's what I hope that people get out of it, that they're moved by it.
Any bands on your bucket list you want to work with, maybe that you would love to see cross over and do something with the symphony?
Well, I tried to get Rob to get Infectious Grooves to come and do something with us.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Yeah, and he was like, that sounds kind of cool. He was thinking about it, and so I don't know. I maybe that will happen in the future. I'm going to stay on him on that to try and get them to to do so. I think that could be a really cool fit. Who knows? Like, boy. They're an amazing band. I mean, some of the messages that I don't get into the satanic stuff so much.
Oh yeah.
but like there's a band, Mudvayne. Those guys are just unbelievable. But I don't know. Maybe it might be too just far gone to fit with an orchestra. Are they still together? That band?
No. Mudvayne.
Oh, they're not. Okay.
Has broken up, and then they formed Hell Yeah, which Vinnie Paul from Pantera was their drummer, but unfortunately we lost Vinnie Paul as well.
Yeah.
So
that bass player in Mudvayne is unbelievable.
Oh yeah, that's
I forgot his name. It's just slipped my mind. But I know you'd be surprised. Some people are so surprised I even know that band, because it's pretty out there. But but their sound and their groove is just really, really intense, really powerful.
Yeah. He's been on my show before. The bass player. I cannot think of his name.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, they're Dig is one of my favorite songs by them. Happy is another song by them. Mm-hmm. Oh my God. Mudvayne was one of those bands was just like a sleeper, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, they're total virtuosos.
Yeah.
Absolute virtuosos.
Yeah. So what was your first take on when you first heard Metallica? What was, if you can recall, possible?
Oh, back when I was like 15 and first heard them. I loved it. Yeah, it was just, I took to it right away. I think the first song I heard was One.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
That was the first Metallica song I ever heard. And then I kind of went backwards from there into the Ride the Lightning and Master of Puppets. And of course, then I loved that record. Or Kill 'Em All, I should say, too. Just, getting through those other earlier stuff. And I just loved it. Yeah. I took the band right away.
Scott, how can folks stay in touch with you, the symphony, everything that you guys have possibly going on down the road once everything's back to normal, and pick up the S&M 2 album? How can they do that, good sir?
Well, I mean, you can pick up the S&M 2 through many different retailers, of course, and there's the San Francisco Symphony.org website if you want to see stuff that we're going to be putting out. This year, obviously, because of the current situation, most of what we're going to be doing is going to be digital online content. For me, I'm so busy teaching and doing stuff with the symphony that I don't do a lot of outside. Well, and I have some outside groups that I do, but I don't do a lot of like digital content personally. But I do have an Instagram page. It's not that interesting. I'm so bad about social media. I have the hardest time getting into it. In fact, I really kind of hate it personally. But I did Facebook for years, and I was just like, I just can't get into this, and I just shut it down. I just stopped doing it. And I do have Instagram. I post there's a bunch of pictures of kind of behind the scenes stuff from Metallica. Up on from that whole experience up on my Instagram page, and then pictures of me like scuba diving and bike riding, like stuff like that. It's not that interesting. So, I think that some of the Metallica stuff. There's some pictures of me up there with Ray Burton and Rob, and so there's some cool stuff there.
Scott, before I let you go, would you care to do a promo for my show?
Sure. Hi, everybody. This is Scott Pingel, and you're listening to BODS Mayhem Hour.
Everybody stick around. We got some great stuff coming up. You only hear these interviews right here on BODS Mayhem Hour and BODS Mayhem Hour podcast. Please get out, check out our Facebook page. It has our podcast link, YouTube link, and you want to subscribe to our YouTube link and all other platforms that we're on. And we're just about on everything out there. And also, please check out the San Francisco Symphony, and of course, pick up Metallica's S&M2 and check out Scott's bass solo on this. You will not be disappointed. Again, Scott, thank you for what you've done, because you have totally renovated this solo again, man.
Oh, thank you. It's been my pleasure and my honor, and I'm so happy to have gotten to do it.
You're listening to BODS Mayhem Hour.
Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.